You're an environmental trainer and you love delivering your training. It's just a bit inconvenient when your boss keeps saying to you, so show me the money. Kia ora, ko Clare Feeney toko ingoa. I'm a strategic environmental trainer and welcome to this short video on how to measure the financial return on investment of your training. So is this you? You're struggling to justify the cost of your training. Your managers keep asking you about what are the actual benefits, and they're asking you to measure how it contributes to real business outcomes. Difficult questions. So if this is you, you're in the right place, because today we're going to look at how to measure the true value of your environmental training. And believe me, it is amazing. It totally is. So as I said before, my name is Clare Feeney, and in 2019, I founded the Environment and Sustainability Strategic Training Institute so that I could share the IP I've gained over many years of working with some wonderful clients in environmental training. I've encapsulated much of that in my book that also came out in late 2019, and it's a how-to guide on how to run successful environmental training. So this is just peeking into one of the workshops I run to help people work with the book. So what does your training really do for the business? Well, there are three things that ROI will tell you. It'll tell you the true cost of the small stuff we get wrong every single day at work. It'll tell you the full cost of the occasional big mistake. Like, they don't happen often, but when they do, they're awful. And it will also help you capture the huge returns that our training actually delivers. And we often forget to do this, but we have to think ahead about how to measure them before we can really do all of those three things. So let's have a quick look at what exactly is training, especially for high compliance companies. It's a very specific definition. It's work related. It relates to knowledge, skills, and practice. It relates to specific aspects of workplace performance, aspects that an auditor would detect just by observing the work practice. And so obviously we're looking at this for environment and sustainability. Well, while we're at the definitions, let's have a look at the definition of ROI, which is of course widely used in the business world. So it measures in monetary terms whether or not our training, well, it measures all sorts of things, but we're talking about environmental training, whether it generates a net positive benefit to the organisation. Is our training worth it? So again, we're in the field of environment and sustainability. Now, the words we use will help us choose our indicators, so it pays to select them with care. So when we're looking at the investment in our training, these are often called costs, and if we don't measure the outcomes, that's all they are, they're just costs. When we measure the outcomes, they become an investment. What do we invest in our training? Time and money, obviously. There are other things, in kind, transport, printing, catering, all sorts of other things. The cost of staff to attend because they're not doing their other work, although this is incredibly important. What sort of returns do we want? How do we define the outcomes that our training should deliver? And how are we going to measure them? Again, it has to be objectively measurable. And the ROI, the return on investment, looks at what outcomes does our training actually deliver and what is the dollar benefit to the organisation. So what we're going to look at today is just the immediate response costs and the immediate follow-up costs and the opportunity costs of responding to an incident, because this helps us work out the merit of our training. We'll be looking at that now. What we're not going to look into is these other bigger, scarier things, which are often more expensive and can be significantly more damaging to the company. Now, if your company is interested in this, don't hesitate to give me a call and we can look into some of this in more detail for you. So we're going to look at 4 tables that will help us count the cost of a real life spill. This spill occurred after dark on a Friday night, because that's when spills always seem to happen, isn't it? So a cubic metre of roading paint got spilled down a very steep bank into a stream that was thought initially that it drained into the water supply intake of a small town in New Zealand. It later turned out it didn't, but I have to say that the company would have responded just as urgently, even if it knew that it didn't. So when the spill happened, the on-site staff notified senior managers. The senior managers notified the council, then they rustled around, grabbed a whole lot of extra staff, phoned up solid and liquid waste disposal people, fire engine, and they all turned up on site, and it took all night. It took all night to clean up this spill, and they did the most amazing job. They did such a good job that the council decided not to prosecute at all because they had cleaned up the damage. So what happened was that I actually had the tools to analyse the full costs, and so my client, this company, called me in, and we adapted these tables so that they could add up and just see what was the real value, the real expense of that spill. So this first table is the upfront cash, which obviously involves time. So for all the different staff members, they would all be paid different wages and salaries. So we add up the number of hours, the hourly rate, and the total cost. Materials and supplies. So that's all the cleanup equipment, the kitty litter, all the stuff that you buy and have in place already, and how much was the cost of that. Then you've got your time charged by external parties. So that'll be the fire service, the solid waste guys, the guys with the sucker trucks. And then you've got plant and equipment hire. So you might need a pump, all that sort of stuff, and you have to hire that in, and you're adding up the total cost of that. Then there was damage to plant and equipment as a result of this thing toppling down the bank. And so we added in that cost as well. So that's the upfront immediate response. Now, of course, the only bad mistake is the one you don't learn from. So the company then used my second lot of tables, which is what are the costs of recovering from the incident and extracting the learnings. And that's things like reporting by the site or project manager, investigations by the environmental team, internal comms and meetings, development of new procedures and staff training and toolbox talks and changes to your spill and emergency plans. And I think one of the other things that they did, this company were brilliant. They fully acknowledged the efforts and made a great fuss of the actual staff on site who'd phoned everyone up immediately. They gave them T-shirts and, slap up lunch. It was really lovely recognition, put them in the staff newsletter. Okay, so then we've got a third table in that category of just the upfront response, and this is the opportunity cost. So again, those staff should have been working on the roadworks that they were engaged to do. So what's the opportunity cost of not doing that? Now, this happened at night, so your salaried staff, there's no opportunity cost there for the poor things unless they end up taking a bit of a day off. But if it happened in the daytime, what other work would they have been taken off to respond to an emergency like this? Did you need to call in the lawyer for an early briefing in case things start looking a bit sticky? The accounting staff, you've got to go to them to ask for immediate payments on stuff. What's going to happen to your project margins, your profitability, your productivity? These are all things that we needed to look at, and we added them all up. So here's table 4, where we're adding up the costs of all of those 3 tables. And the actual cost for this incident came to well over $150,000. It was quite a big lump of money. So the thing is, though, how much would it cost to clean up a much smaller spill? So someone who attended one of my workshops decided, because she'd had on a site, she was working with a client's site, someone had spilled a cube of concrete and it had to be got rid of. It was in the way, it couldn't be used, Came to about $5,000 just for 1 cube of concrete. So you're not going to have your giant, 12-hour response spill happening every day, but you will probably have lots of 1 cubes of concrete being mishandled much more commonly. And I think the moral of the story is that spills add up, big or small. They actually cost us real money, but we don't count it, we absorb it. And I think that when we count it up, we can then do something about it. So we often don't count this stuff, but it's really important. Now here we cut to the chase. How do we measure the ROI? In the business world, there are 4 formulae that we use: net gain, ROI, benefit cost, and payback period. So the net gain is very simple. Say we delivered some training, it cost $2,000 and we identified $12,000 worth of benefit. The net gain is simply $10,000. Okay, so then for the ROI itself, we take the total benefit minus the total cost, so that'll be $10,000, over the total cost. So we multiply that by 100%. So with the absolute number from net gain, we convert that to a percentage. So the ROI in that case turned out to be 500%. You think of them, what we're earning in our bank accounts these days, 500% is pretty astronomical, really, isn't it? So then the benefit cost ratio is another really good way of looking at these things. And so again, it's simple division, and it tells you the dollar return for every dollar you spent. So in this case, for our $12,000 benefit and our $10,000 and our $2,000 expenses, it comes to, for every dollar we spent, we get $6 back. So that's a really helpful way of looking at it. Then you can also compare different methods, of course, using this. Anyway, payback period, again, total costs over total benefits, and you multiply that by 12, and that will tell you how many months it takes to pay back the investment. This is often really important in business facing big capital expenditure. So in this case, according to my calculations, which are not always that reliable, I think the payback period for us using the 12,000 benefit and 2,000 costs is a couple of months. So you can see that this is really helpful, comparable stuff. What we're going to look at now is where ROI fits into the big picture of how trainers evaluate their training. This is real professional trainers out there in the world. So level 1 is reaction. Did the people coming to the training find it clear, comprehensive, engaging, understandable? Is it going to really, did it really relate to their work? Then the level 2 is the learning. What did they actually learn? What new knowledge did they come away with? Level 3 evaluation is workplace practice. Did your training end up generating the kind of changes in practice at work that you really wanted it to do? Level 4, what's the business impact? How's that working out on KPIs, on financial targets, environmental compliance, all that sort of stuff? And then ROI at the top is, was it a positive financial return? And the ROI is only those 4 formulae. That's all it is. But the catch is, you need to measure levels 1 to 4 before you can actually do that. Now that's a whole different ballgame that we can't go into now, but it just shows some of the rigor that professional trainers use. We can measure this if we think about it up front. So it's quite a fabulous model. I love this. And this, of course, equates directly to New Zealand's 4 well-beings. So, there's a lot of thinking, especially in a post-COVID era, which will go on for a long time. We do have a global skills shortage. We've got a shortage of environmental skills. And if you've got training skills on top of that, we have never needed that more than we do now. And people with these skills are going to be in huge demand. Your work is so important. So what does all of this mean, this brief helicopter view for you and your environmental training? What will you do as a result of watching this short video? Just think about 3 things you can do. And my challenge to you is to write down these 3 things, to actually do one of them within 1 week, and within 3 weeks to have actually made a substantial difference to one of them. And whatever you do, let me know. I'd just love to know exactly how you go. So that's that for now. Thank you very much for your time. And if you want more information, you can grab a list of the key references that I've referred to in this short video. You can book me for a free, no obligation chat, absolutely no obligation. And you do that by emailing me at clare.feeney@ess.institute. And have a good old look around the website. There's quite a bit of stuff there, loads of freebies that you can download as well. So thank you for your time. Aroha nui to all of you for the fabulous work you're doing. Get back out there, team, and start helping save the world. Go well.